What's up, y'all? Welcome back. We're continuing our macro tracker series. And in this video, I wanted to go through and set up our UI a little bit more, fix it up, and implement our actual macros that we have saved and created in the previous episode where we're using SwiftData to do so. And the first thing I want to do is I want to actually create a model, call this daily macro. And what's going to be the difference with this model? And then one thing I need to do is conform to identifiable, by the way. That makes things a lot easier when you're using like a for each. You don't have to worry about using the ID. So why are we creating a separate model? That's because in our previous, I want to display each of the previous days, not each of the previous days, but whatever information they have, I want to display those previous dates and the total carbohydrates, fats, and proteins they had for that given day. So to do so, we need to create a separate model because our macro model only supports each macro, so like each meal, basically. So I'm creating a new model, and this won't be a SwiftData model. This will be just a regular Swift model that's going to be used to interpret that data. So we're going to have a date for it, and we're going to have fats or carbs first. So we're going to have carbs, fats, and protein. Is it protein or proteins? I'm going to just go with protein. I don't think it's plural. This is good. I want to do is at the bottom here. So actually, not at the bottom. Let's first create these functions. So I'm going to create a private func, call this fetch daily macros. And how are we going to fetch these daily macros? So we're going to use the array that we get from SwiftData, and we're going to do some manipulation to it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to filter that array from SwiftData and figure out what dates are actually in there. And what does that mean? And what unique dates. So that basically will tell us what days do we have entries for our macros. So I'm going to create a variable for dates, and we actually need to declare this as a set of date. And that's how you do that. And then we need to call set. And why we're using a set? Because a set is a clean and easy way to remove duplicates in an array. And the array that we're going to be using is macros, but we want to map the macros based on their date. And we can't just use date because you enter macros at separate times of the day, and that would be comparing separate times of the day. So we're going to grab the start of the date for each date. And what this array inside of the set is doing is it's going to loop through each item of macros, and it's going to grab the date for it. And based on that date, and so then it's going to be an array of dates. And our set here is going to remove the duplicates. So we'll know that this set contains an array of unique dates. So we can actually loop through those dates. And what do we want to do when we loop through them? So we need to create a var here called daily macros. And this is going to be an array of daily macros. And for each of these, so for each date, we want to filter the macros array. So we're going to call macros.filtered. And what do we want to filter by? We want to filter that the calendar.current.start of day of the given date of the SwiftData macro. We want to make sure, and let's hide our previous since we're not doing UI right now, equals the date. And that's going to filter our macros array to only have macros that are for the given date in our loop. And a cool thing we can do is then we can take that array and just grab all the information from it using filter. Shout out to reduce. Shout out to higher order functions, which I believe map, filter, and reduce all are. And we're using them all in this function. That's pretty cool. Reduce. So when you use reduce, this first thing is the initial result. So in our case, it's going to be 0. And then after this, you basically want to specify what you want to happen with the previous result and the current item. So the previous result is $0. That's how you access it. And that's just going to be an integer because we have specified this as, well, Swift is going to assume it's an integer because it's 0. And we can explicitly say it's going to be an integer if we do that. And then we want that integer to be added, and you need to say $1 to reference the item in the array. So when this first happens, it's going to be referencing the first item, and the initial result will be 0. So that's what this will be, and this will be the first item. And then once it has that, it'll go to the second one, and it'll keep doing this process where it refers back to the previous. And you see we have an issue because this is actually a macro. You see, you can't add it to an integer. But to access the information that we want, we just have to say .carbs. And boom, now we have all the carbs for that given day. And if we just copy this and we change this to fats and we change this to protein, you put fats in here and you put protein in here. Hit Command B, and we have warnings because we're not using it. And we can say let macro equal daily macro, and we need to initialize it for that day. And we can just pass in the carbs, the fats, the protein. There we go. And we just append that to our daily macros array. Macro. There we go. And boom, we have this in our view. Wait, now this will give us all the daily macros. And we actually should create a state var here. Where should we put this? Let's just do it under here at state var. This will be daily macros. And for this one, we're going to initialize it as an empty array of daily macros. And then back in our function, we can just say self daily macros equal daily macros. And now on appear, we can call this. And I don't like that on appear. So we can call fetch daily macros. We can keep this just for now. And we can update this function. So, and actually what I'll do is let's just create an H stack really quickly. And that H stack will have text. And we should need to change this because this needs to be a for loop of the daily macros. So I want to call that there. We'll call this macro. And now we can reference the macro dot date, and we can reference the macro. And I believe we need string interpolation, right? Because these information is not it's not a string. So the macro dot fats. Let's copy this. Was it carbs and protein? I believe this is a date, right? So we need to call formatted. Now let's run this. And if you have data in your device, you should see it pop up here. Ah, there we go. This looks horrible, right? But we're going to fix our UI in a second. But this looks good, though. Well, it's working, so that part looks good. All right, so we know it's working. And we can... I want to refactor this into macro header view. Because we're going to be using a different one for the each item. We shouldn't have any issues. And you can copy the UI for this, to be honest. We'll copy this H stack, but we're going to change our implementation. So we're going to go here and create a new file. SwiftUI view. We'll call this macro item, or actually day view, since it's going to be of each day. And let's require a state var of daily macro. So we'll have to copy this to get rid of issues. And we'll have to fix this. And this gets rid of the S. Dot now, carbs. A lot of food that day. I guess that day. And this should probably look the same as the previous one, right? Yep. Except we want a date. We want to use a date. So, how do I want to structure the date? So I'm going to create an extension on date. And let's see. So we can create this as a property. And we're going to call this macro. This could be a property or a function. I like to use a property for any formatting stuff. This is fairly straightforward. Var macro. But let's think about what. So I want this one to, let's just do month and year. Macro. And unit month and year. And you need to specify this is a type string. So we need to create a formatter first. This will be date formatter. And return. And we need to say formatter.date format. We need to specify here the format we want. I believe month, year will give us our desired result. And we call formatter.string for or from self. Here, let's see, macro. Then we can call this month. There you go. And I'm in September, right? Yep. That's good. And let's do a title. And I actually want to, I want to take all of these and put it in its own H stack. Figured we get something like that. Let's remove the images. I believe it's, let me move this spacer. What does that do? There we go. Put that spacer here. September 2023. Let's get one for the day and the time. You can copy this, and for formatting dates, you can, to be honest, you could do, there's a few options. You can look up ChatGPT. There's also a website for Swift dates. I'm going to look up Swift data extension to get the, so this is what I looked up and it gave me that. And then you can just tell it to combine it. It looks like it's not gonna do that for me, so we can just do it ourselves. And we can say at hour, minute, AM. Let's try that. So, and we would want to do that in a VStack. Text, and we'll say macro date dot day and time. We could do it like that if we wanted to keep the keep it all in one line. And I believe this is a 24-hour time. And you guys could play around with this, to be honest. You can do, because you could do like, put a day here, get rid of the year if you wanted, and just have the time. I think it's just A. There we go. I think that probably looks a lot nicer. We'll go with that. And let's just do an alignment of leading. And get rid of all this stuff. And you just add a parentheses. And now let's call this. So we would call that here macro day view. And then we just pass in the macro. With this won't work in our simulator, in our preview, so we had to run the simulator. It will work on your simulator, on your preview if you just add items in your preview. This looks good. I'm gonna change a few things though. I don't like that they're not like, I like the sizing is different. So let's add a frame, call it min width of 100. How does that look? Not bad. But then this suffers a little bit. Our protein here. Let's go back, and what happens if we remove our padding? And let's remove these spacers actually. I think they're doing more harm than good in our H stack. Now let's run these. We still get this. And we'll fix the order in a second. And this needs an alignment of dot leading, by the way. There we go. That looks good. Is this too much? Let's do 90. And let's not even use min width. Let's just use width. All right, that looks good. And you could bring the image back in, to be honest. You could bring the image back in. We will hold off on that. And let's do a little bit refactoring. Let's put this in its own file. Call this date plus ext for your extensions. Cool. And now, and we should probably, we need to update these names actually, because this is getting the month and date. Month and day. This is just time. Probably a better name than just time, but we'll call it time. Cool. Let's see. What we missing? All right, so all we need to do is use some parentheses, and we'll say backslash dot date. Actually, I got ahead of myself. We need to say sort, and then we'll call backslash dot date. Cannot infer the type. So what order does this fetch it in? Let's see. gives it us like this. Reverse. Actually, I think it's order, and then you say reverse. And this is not working, and and the reason it's not working is because we're actually using daily macros, so we might as well sort our daily macros sorted by, you can use this one. And in here we do a comparison. So we want this date to be greater than the next one. Oh, this has to be 1, sorry. And we can assign that here. Boom. And if you were displaying your macros or the macro object, you would just do that here using the sort and the order operators. You can use that, and you do macro date, but we're not using it this way, so we don't have to worry about that. If we go back to our preview though, it shows up, and I might edit it. I might change this from title to just regular. Maybe this to, actually, let's change it from title 1 to, let's try title 2. This looks good. You can even reduce the size now. That looks pretty good. Might bring in an image later on. But I'm gonna stop here now for this video. We went through and we created our custom item or custom view for this. And the next thing we need to handle is when we add, and we can do that now actually. So on change of this, so whenever this changes, we can just call our fetch daily macros. And then you don't have to worry about when a new item is created, how that information is going to be displayed, because this is going to change and this will be called. All right, so I'm going to stop here for now. In the next video, we're going to set up to actually fetch today's, and we probably don't want to include today in this previous since it's not the end of the day yet. So we're going to be working on that. The next video may implement some UI changes, make this look nicer, and I'll see you guys there. Peace.